Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Universal continues to come for Disney, yet they cannot match the mouse themselves. For instance, while How to Train Your Dragon looks to have dashed Lilo and Stitch's dreams of hitting a billy, it's still opened far, far lower. I mean, the live-action dragon flick is the biggest opening ever for its franchise, with, speaking of dreaming, look at those magical audience scores. And like Lilo and Stitch, both of these remakes were cheap to make. In fact, one of the best headlines about How to Train Your Dragon is that it actually cost less to make the live-action movie than it did the original animated one. Oh, that's a beauty. Thank you, Dean DeBloy. I hope Universal showed the appropriate thanks. You know, back in the day, they used to give big gifts to talent in front of him behind the camera when they did something great for the studio. Haven't seen those headlines in a while. I wonder if they still do it or if they're keeping it on the hush-hush. You would think with social media it would get out. All right, so Disney, by the way, did have some good news this week as Andor topped the Nielsen streaming charts. Number one on the overall. Talk about hope. Today, we're also going to discuss, we have a lot of great stuff to discuss today. And another thing will be A24 continuing to have its biggest openings at the box office by misleading the general public about what the actual films are. Ho! And yet another franchise finds its audience slipping through its fingers, Marvel and now Mission Impossible, as Final Reckoning is looking like the lowest grossing entry for the franchise in like 20 years. Oh my God, Tom Cruise must be like, what's happening? All of Hollywood is kind of saying that these days. Let me explain. So is Jurassic World next? Tracking came online for Rebirth last week with the 7th entry in the franchise looking at a 115 to 135 opening for the 5-day. Because it comes out for the 4th of July weekend, it opens on Wednesday. That would give Jurassic World Rebirth an opening 3-day weekend of under 100 million. The lowest opening since they were called Jurassic Park movies. Oh, that would be just so devastatingly bad. Maybe Universal should not have rushed it. Remember, we were like, boy, you're really going to make a Jurassic movie that quickly? And they were like, yep. And we found this guy, Gareth Edwards. I always mix him up with Gareth Evans. Gareth Edwards, he makes great movies for cheap. And you're like, have you looked at his box office numbers? And they should have maybe looked at them a little more closely. I mean, there's Rogue One, which we're talking about Andor actually today, but Tony Gilroy had to come in there and save the day. A friend of mine in the industry noted that the studios feel like they're flailing with no idea what audiences want, what will actually get them to come out to the theater. Because there are a lot of movies, even while they're in theaters these days, which find themselves up on the digital charts with audiences saying, that looks great. I can't wait to watch it at home in a couple of weeks. Oh, is that you? Is that you? So far this year, the only verified hits, like across the board, are Warner Brothers' Minecraft and Sinners. Lilo and Stitch, of course, is making a lot of money, but it would be disappointing and somewhat embarrassing if it doesn't hit $1 billion. Well, How to Train Your Dragon, sure, it's more than solid. I mean, we'll talk about why it's slightly disappointing, but it just started. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Remember, things can change in an instant. I mean, in anything, but in Hollywood as well. We started the year thinking that Warner Brothers' Mike DeLuca and Pam Abney were going to get kicked out and shown the door. But I think that Jurassic World's low tracking should make both Superman and Fantastic Four a little nervous. That's very scary, because that's been such a strong, consistent performer for Universal. As we get closer and closer to the July juggernauts actually hitting theaters, how do you think they're really going to do? 'Cause it's hard to tell. Let me tell you a little story. So in New York City here, you could not get a ticket to see the Materialists all weekend long. It was such a hot ticket, in fact, in New York City, that some friends of mine who didn't want to go were like, maybe we should go. But then AMC Lincoln Square, showing it on multiple screens. In fact, it played every hour starting at 4:30 p.m. No tickets, Friday through Sunday. In fact, there are still no good seats available until Wednesday because, there's the overflow from the weekend on Monday. And then, of course, Tuesday's discount ticket day. So that's always a crowded time at the multiplex. But yeah, and that was just in New York City. Was Materialists selling well near you? because for North America overall, the Materialists only ended up being a $12 million opening. So if you want real money, as I always tell you, you got to mobilize middle America and movie theaters outside of major and medium-sized cities. I'm talking about that small movie theater in Pittsburgh, the suburbs of Pittsburgh, that I used to go to. I actually only went there once as a tween because I walked in there and I said, I took my movies very seriously even back then, and I would go to Pittsburgh for the summers. So I was like, what kind of sound system you got for your theater for the new movie that was playing? And the woman got very angry with me and said, yeah, our theaters have sound, thank you very much. And I was like, okay. Because apparently premium sound systems weren't even a thing on her radar. She just was like, what do you mean? Of course they have sound. So I never went to that theater. I just backed out of the lobby and was like, have a nice day, ma'am. And then I just went to another theater. Or maybe she was thrown because I was pretty little about someone asking about whether or not they had a premium sound system. But what's your craziest movie theater experience trying to find out? It's less than, these days everybody plays that game. But if you were one of the early fans of premium theaters like myself, what did you do to figure out what theater it was playing in and what the sound system was in so you could have the best experience? I know all the best seats in all the theaters I like to go to. I'm that kind of moviegoer, and I'm sure many of you are as well. But yes, premium theaters have come quite a long way since then. But here's another good story. I went to see How to Train Your Dragon again in IMAX 3D on Saturday. That's right, my dad wanted to see it for Father's Day weekend. He loved it. Loved it. We wanted to go at 7 p.m. It was a 3D showing. We had no choice. They're doing that for a lot of movies these days. You're like, would you like to go to the main showing of the day in the evening? 3D! So we went begrudgingly. And also, just as soon as the movie started, well, not when the movie started, but I missed the cool IMAX intro. But one of the lenses on my 3D glasses went out. I was like, what the? And someone else had to come downstairs to the lobby and ask for another pair of glasses as well for the same reason. So if you go to an IMAX 3D screening, I'm going to do this too, and it's one of those electrical 3D glasses, get a backup pair so you don't have to climb out of your row, go all the way back down and miss the opening. I was pretty upset about it. But I gotta tell you, the 3D looked pretty good. Did you see How to Train Your Dragon in 3D? I was like, oh, this looks actually really good. And in fact, they showed the Fantastic Four trailer in 3D. And I gotta say, for a movie that wasn't shot in 3D, it looked really good. I was like, are you sure this wasn't shot in 3D? The depth of field is amazing. Anyway, IMAX 3D, 7 p.m. showing. Hardly any kids in the theater. I would say there were under 10 kids in the entire theater, which is amazing. Interestingly, 68% of How to Train Your Dragon's audience was under 35. But I wonder how many were above 18. I suspect that while some kids surely loved the film, I got some great stories from some of you. This was one of my favorite comments that I received, and I hope that was indeed a great day for you and your family. But I think a lot of the people who went to see this live-action remake are OG fans, grown up, from the animated movies and shows. Lilo and Stitch's audience was also heavily under 35. Actually, even more so, as you can see, but it did way better with diverse audiences, despite How to Train Your Dragon's efforts to reach out to diverse audiences. I think that's interesting that it didn't have much of an effect. Why do you think How to Train Your Dragon didn't open as big as Lilo and Stitch? Here's my theory. I'm excited to hear your own thoughts down below. Less appeal to small kids who weren't necessarily that familiar with the franchise. Less appeal to diverse audiences, which I'm not quite sure why that was, but I think that's very interesting. And then fans upset that it was basically a shot-for-shot remake with not a lot of new story added. Although, after seeing Lilo and Stitch, I bet there are a lot of us who would kill for a shot-for-shot remake of Lilo and Stitch after we saw what it had been turned into. Because How to Train Your Dragon preserved the heart, integrity, and sophistication of the original animated movie. Lilo and Stitch might be making a lot of money at the box office, but social media continues to be very upset about the changes, particularly the ending. I think justifiably so. I did not care for that film. So much so that the director has tried to defend himself, but fans are still not having it. They're like, nice try, buddy. I think their words were, go tell your tale with not a beloved IP. And I think that's a very fair counterpoint to his argument. Will this end up hurting Lilo and Stitch down the line on digital and Disney+? Films like Moana, Moana 2, and Encanto have been huge on Disney+. And surely Disney is hoping for the same with Lilo and Stitch, which interestingly fits in pretty well with those other films. I'm sensing a pattern developing here if they want to keep making hit films like this. I think live-action Moana is shaping up to potentially be very successful. Let's see how much. The Rock's kind of taken a break, hasn't he? Interesting. I think he hurt us, by being overexposed. Will Pedro Pascal hear some of you? I don't think Pedro Pascal's quite there yet, but I wasn't getting tired of The Rock either. All right. Do you have an interest in watching the live-action Lilo and Stitch multiple times down the line? Do you see that as a movie you're going to turn on like you might have turned on these other films? Speaking of Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon co-creator and director Dean DeBlois was asked about Lilo and Stitch, which he had co-directed with Chris Sanders. And DeBlois said Disney never even reached out to him. They ghosted him. They silenced him. Because he's not the voice. That's the only reason they needed Chris Sanders. Two directors having very different experiences right now, but both their movies seem to be hits. So Hollywood is definitely going to continue with live-action remakes of animated classics. I just did a whole video on Disney's best options for their next live-action adaptations. Check that out. And you can bet DreamWorks will be making more, even beyond more How to Train Your Dragon movies. I agree with you. Road to El Dorado would be amazing. But DreamWorks is staging a comeback overall, even in animation. That was so tough. When Universal bought them, the stipulation was that Jeffrey Katzenberg couldn't come along. So mean. He has his ups and downs, but let's have some respect for who engineered the Disney Renaissance. I'm just saying. All right, and perhaps other animated classics will get a nod as well. What do you want to see when it comes to live-action remakes of classic animated movies? Shot for shot or more story added in? For me, I like more story, but not at the cost of the original story. I like to build on instead of, doing a demolition derby like I feel Lilo and Stitch did. To me, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin are perfect examples of building on the original story. I really enjoyed How to Train Your Dragon. I thought it was great, but I would have loved it even more if they'd built on some additional story elements. What live-action remakes have you liked the best, and why? Okay, now let's talk some numbers. But before we do, I want to take just a moment to ask you to subscribe. I have some big reviews coming out this week. That's right, your eyes do not deceive you. F1 this week. The review embargo lifts tomorrow, even though the movie doesn't come out until June 27th. The review embargo lifts at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, but I'm actually just seeing it tonight. So my review will go up tomorrow, but later in the day. And you'll know as soon as it's posted if you hit subscribe and that little notification bell button. And hey, as long as you're clicking on stuff down there, as I like to say, why not click on like as well? All right, so yes, How to Train Your Dragon is the best opening for the franchise to date. However, I think Hollywood is a bit bummed that with audience scores like this and a very strong Thursday night with previews, it couldn't open over 100 million. I'm disappointed. Sure, it beat its tracking, but Minecraft, Lilo and Stitch, Moana 2, Inside Out 2, that Disney, and Uni's own Wicked all opened bigger. Warner Brothers' Beetlejuice, another nostalgia play, also opened bigger. Jurassic World Rebirth isn't even tracking to have a 100 million 3-day opening. What is it about 100 million this year? I think at this point, almost halfway through the year, any Hollywood studio would be thrilled if a movie could just open at 100 million or more, which takes some of the pressure off of Superman and Fantastic Four. We thought Jurassic World Rebirth would be competition for them, but perhaps it might lower expectations for them. Now, as for the other movie opening this weekend, Materialists is A24's third biggest opening ever. Yet every time they've managed to get a big opening, it's been by misrepresenting their films in the ad campaigns and tricking mainstream audiences into giving them a whirl. For evidence, look at these horrible audience scores. Civil War managed to just drop, 56% in its second weekend, and Hereditary 50%. They're not horrible. And these movies are very cheap to make. So I'm sure, I don't know how long A24 can keep doing this, before mainstream audiences realize, the kind of movies that A24 puts out. And while mainstream audiences might feel that Materialists is a bad surprise, cinephiles loved it because they weren't surprised. As one of you said, you guys know what to expect from Celine's song. But the ad campaign was very, very misleading, I must say. Maybe Celine Song decided to go commercial. I mean, she didn't, but it looked like she kind of did. So I do think, though, even I think, the film is a bummer that it's very well made. So I think that Materialists still has a shot at some awards nominations, particularly for Celine Song for Best Original Screenplay. When I was looking at all those sold-out showings over the weekend, before I saw that it was just going to come in at 12, I thought this might protect Pedro Pascal in case F4 falters at the box office in just about a month or so. But with this low opening for a rom-com and horrible audience scores, not so much. I don't think it's going to be able to do that for him. Fascinatingly, Materialists' audience skewed heavily female, 74%, 69% under 35, but they didn't like it because that audience score was so low. The stars were a big draw, though, and Johnson, Evans, and Pascal went above and beyond promoting the film, which has to count for something. Although, again, I'm sure Disney's like, but don't overexpose yourself right before we need you to promote Fantastic Four. I don't think Materialists will help this trio or Celine Song level up, but I do think they'll definitely keep working because smaller films need talent like this in front of and behind the camera that can make a big splash. As James Gunn gets closer to his Wonder Woman movie, it's being written as we speak. One actress has fallen out of the running, and that would be Ana de Armas, because Ballerina just plummeted 62% in just its second weekend. Ouch! And again, that's with great audience scores. Although, as one of you pointed out recently, I forgot where, so I couldn't get the screenshot, but somebody said, what's Hollywood's obsession with making Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man, The Last of Us without Joel, and now John Wick movies without John Wick? Watch out, Clayface movie. Maybe not a good idea. And again, while Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is still pretty high up in the top 10, it's pretty low down in the franchise itself. And it's been out for a month at this point. At least thanks to overseas box office, its global take is at $500 million. Meanwhile, Thunderbolts, definitely not going to even reach $400 million. So even with low standards, it's still not going to break even. I mean, we've been buying Disney's budgets that they say, and they're still not meeting the break-even points. It's less successful than Captain America 4. Meanwhile, though, Sinners, still in the top 10, even though it's doing incredibly well on digital, with a substantially higher domestic gross than every movie here except for Lilo and Stitch. Warner Brothers has also another hit with Final Destination Bloodlines, which is up to $271 worldwide off of a $50 million budget. Good gravy! That's a lot of gravy. Karate Kid Legends, though, still struggles to find an audience. It's a charming movie, but I think too small to compete in the summer marketplace. I hope it finds an audience on digital and streaming. It's really very good. Which might be the same fate for Pixar's Elio hitting theaters this weekend, or Elio. We'll talk about that at the very end when we talk about this coming week. And two smaller awards hopefuls, The Phoenician Scheme and The Life of Chuck, are only doing okay. The Life of Chuck has a much better Rotten Tomatoes audience score, but Wes Anderson's film has a better all-star cast. I think both will do their best business on digital and streaming. And let's head over there right now. There it is! A Disney Plus show from Star Wars, no less, at the top of the overall chart. Is this real? Are we hallucinating? No, it's really happening. And this was for the final week of Andor, where I'm sure binge watching kicked in as well. Because, it was a Tuesday night drop. So this is for the entire week. So a lot of people, I'm sure, caught up. Rogue One, by the way, if you're wondering, did pop into the movies chart. Many fans went right from the Andor Season 2 finale into Rogue One, as is intended. Which was quite the experience. I did it myself. But the numbers are much smaller for Rogue One. It's at the bottom of the movies chart. Is this all because of the 3 episodes at a time release strategy? Partially, but I don't think that's it. I mean, remember, Tony Gilroy wrote Andor Season 2 to play in 3-episode chunks. I mean, I don't know if he thought it was going to air that way, but it ended up being 3-episode chunks, 3 episodes representing a year as they counted down to the rebellion that starts in Rogue One. Well, in earnest. Also, even the individual episodes themselves were longer than the standard Disney Plus episodes. And most of them, except Night 2, which was pretty boring. but most of them were HBO level quality. In fact, the last 2 nights, episodes 8 through 12, were some of the best streaming content ever on any service and any franchise. Wow! But the Emmys are ultra competitive this year, and we'll see if Disney can break through here as well. The Hollywood Reporter sees it may be getting a nod for Best Drama. Look, the Emmys are allowing 8 nominees in many of the categories. But it's a little bit ridiculous, but at the same time, they're still ending up snubbing a lot of shows because TV's just that good right now. But it's pretty far down the list, meaning it's less likely to actually win. The Hollywood Reporter doesn't predict any acting noms for Andor at all. Maybe Diego Luna. But what about Stellan Skarsgård? I would think he would get it, but then you realize that The White Lotus, where every actor is considered supporting, is clogging up that category. Severance you can see as well. Although I suspect Andor will be able to get nods in directing and writing. Do you think Disney Plus can repeat this success? Ironheart is doing 3 episode drops for 2 nights, a week apart. But I don't really, let's see the quality of the show. I think that maybe Vision Quest, right? Or Ahsoka Season 2, but it depends. Are those going to be shows that are like Marvel and Star Wars shows before them? Are episodes that are just around 30 minutes and they save all the best stuff for a future season? That would be really disappointing. I think Andor and Agatha Agatha didn't do as well in viewership, but it did very well in the right demo for advertisers, and it was very, very strong on social media. So I think Andor and Agatha are showing the way forward for future Disney Plus content. Let's see if Disney leadership is paying attention and how quickly they can pivot. As for the rest of the overall chart, some of you are still defending The Last of Us Season 2, but it's so bad in terms of viewership, such a disappointment and a setback that even the trades are starting to acknowledge it. I wonder if that will affect The Last of Us with its awards momentum. A lot of people felt, it didn't get a ton of wins for the first season because, like Succession or something was wrapping up. So they're like, don't worry, The Last of Us, we'll get you next time. And then look what happened. We'll see. Although that would open up, the field for The Pit, Andor, Severance. I think The Last of Us is going to have trouble against those shows. I'm not saying it's not going to get nominations, but I think it's going to have trouble. Will HBO really barrel forward with season 3 as planned? Maybe they should do a necessary pause and regroup like they did with Euphoria. I don't think Euphoria had a bad season, but apparently they looked at the scripts for the upcoming season and were like, whoa, let's slow our roll. Cast Vince Vaughn as live action Hades, thank you very much. Look at how well known this is done, even after Mother's Day. That's impressive. Not too much going on with the originals chart. You see 4 seasons, Poker Face Season 2, and the final season of The Handmaid's Tale. A nice little grouping there. It's nice. That's solid. And Mobland, still holding on with a death grip to the bottom of this chart, and it even moved up a spot. Then with movies, after a disappointing debut last week, Another Simple Favor plummeted in its first full week as a Prime Video movie. Again, real damage, I think, has been done to Blake Lively. And I believe Ryan Reynolds. And again, there's Rogue One down at the bottom, thanks to Andor Season 2 finale. On Netflix's charts for just last week with movies, Tyler Perry's Still Got It. Not only did Straw have a big debut, but it was huge on social media the weekend it dropped. I saw it trending. People were loving it. It was a good time. Well, it's a very serious and dramatic film, but people were really having a good time watching it and talking about it. Great news for Perry, as well as his frequent collaborator, Taraji P. Henson. What a fighter. She's such a fighter. I really am impressed with her. She doesn't get enough respect for the audience that she can bring in, and she keeps proving that she can. But Hollywood just won't give her the respect she deserves. But she doesn't let it chase her away or make her leave. She keeps coming and proving herself again and again and again. This is their 3rd movie together. Perry, of course, already has a Netflix deal. And just like I think Netflix should sign Vince Vaughn, I would think they should sign a deal with Henson as well. Let her have her own deal there. Then with shows, Ginny and Georgia is still a hit show. It pulled seasons 1 and 2 back up into the top 10 as season 3 debuted. And I'm thrilled to see more people discovering Department Q, while Sirens also continues to be very strong. Now, I'm not the audience for Ginny and Georgia, so I didn't watch it, but I love Department Q and Sirens. Thank you again for those of you who told me to check out Sirens. Just like The Diplomat slowly grew its audience and is now becoming a big show for Netflix, I would love to see the same thing happen to Department Q and Sirens. Have you tried either of these shows? Would you like to see second seasons for them? Over on digital, with Apple's charts, they sure have found a goldmine with bundles. They have new bundles every week, and they keep hitting the top 10 and more. If you go to top 15, you can see even more bundles. And I always wonder, I'm like, are people just discovering Back to the Future now? Or are they like, oh, let me pick it up as long as it's on sale, right? I don't care. As long as you're discovering the magic of Back to the Future, which is coming back, by the way. There are rumors. They just did a Back to the Future like retro or nostalgia night at the parks that did very, very well. And there are rumors that the new London Universal Park will have a whole Back to the Future land. And, that makes me feel, and I saw the musical, which was incredible that they came out with like a year or so ago. Oh, so good. I'm all for the return of the Back to the Future franchise. And we'll see if they make another movie. I hope they don't ruin it, but sometimes they get it right. I mean, if you can bring back the Jurassic movies, and I thought they were I liked a lot of the worlds, and that's Universal too. I think there's some hope for Back to the Future. Just be careful, be delicate with it. Digital continues to be a mix of recent theatrical releases and getting ready for current or upcoming theatrical releases. Case in point, 28 Days Later and the animated How to Train Your Dragon trilogy are all doing well here to coincide with their new releases. I'm also so happy to see Warfare still up here weeks after its release on digital. Such a fantastic movie. I'm glad people are slowly discovering it. A24 advertised correctly. Didn't make a lot of money at the box office, but it's organically growing its audience and people are getting, they're not misled and they're really loving the movie. So that makes me very happy. As for this coming weekend, can we have another highbrow horror hit so close to Sinners with 28 years later? Sinners is still, was still in the top 10 and it's doing great on digital. But I think people are excited about 28 years later. I sure am. The review embargo for that strangely lifts Wednesday evening. That's pretty late for the review embargo. Well, I think it's still going to be good. I have hope. All right, and Disney Pixar's Elio will try to counter-program. But competing with How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch, which are still both very fresh in theaters, what was Disney thinking with this release date? I know that Pixar typically releases its films in June, and that's like a pattern for them, but this is ridiculous. I mean, we'll see. My review for this will be a little bit late. I will be reviewing it Thursday evening. Rebel Wilson's Bride Hard is also hitting theaters. On digital tomorrow, big day. Both Final Destination Bloodlines and A24's Friendship will debut on digital. Well, Disney Plus has 2 new movies this week. Documentary Sally tomorrow, and then on Friday, Frozen's Broadway version will hit the streaming service. Meanwhile, Netflix on Friday also has K-pop Demon Hunters, the animated movie. Then with shows, Apple TV brings The Buccaneers back for a second season starting on Wednesday, and Prime Video has a show called We Were Liars. While on Thursday, Netflix drops The Waterfront from Scream and Dawson Creek's Kevin Williamson. I would describe this as Landman meets Ozark, and I know, because they gave me the screeners in advance. Netflix is really good with screeners. This is one of the ones I decided to give a whirl, and I was shocked at how good it is. I finished it very quickly. I absolutely loved it. And again, the entire season drops because it's Netflix on Thursday. That's Holt McCallany from Mindhunter, Supergirl herself. Some of the things they make Supergirl do, I was like, I don't know if Supergirl can do that. Although we just recently, you'll see, we recently had, it's a different type of discussion, but I do think there's, do you agree? I mean, I do think there's like a wholesomeness that is tied to the super family, which some of you do not seem to agree with. Topher Grace, about halfway through, shows up as a terrific villain. And Jake Weary, who's been acting for a long time, but I've never seen him. And I think this could be a breakout role for him. I thought he was excellent. Again, Landman meets Ozark is how I would describe it. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And does Elio have a chance at the box office? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.